The Texas coast is special to me, and my family has made countless memories there. This spring, it's time for you to do the same in Port Aransas. It's a place where family traditions naturally unfold, and you'll find beauty in the island views while taking time to relax between adventures. Just one visit, and you'll see why generations of Texans have anchored their traditions to the island life. Start your new favorite family tradition in Port Aransas, Texas. Plan your visit to Houston's beach at visitportaransas.com. Today on CityCast Houston, it seems like almost everywhere you go in Houston, you get a tip screen, from grabbing a coffee to go or even a self-checkout. It made us wonder, what are the new rules for tipping in Houston? Has tipping gone too far? To break it all down, I'm bringing on Emma Balter, editor-in-chief at Houstonia Magazine, and Ryan Lachaine, who's worked his way up in the restaurant industry to be chef and owner of RIEL in Montrose. It's Wednesday, April 16th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Hey, Emma. Good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning. Good to be back. Thank you.
And for the first time ever, we got Ryan Lachaine, the chef at RIEL. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I want to start with you, okay? What are your tipping pet peeves as a customer? What annoys you?
I don't know if I have any real like pet peeves. I guess, yeah, sometimes if you're people at a retail place want to get tipped because, I'm straight from the restaurant industry, right? So I know where my tips are going and I know what happens and I know why you should tip someone. I have a full service restaurant. Some of these other tipping things that they have, I'm not sure where it's going or what's happening with it.
What about you, Emma? What is your pet peeve when it comes to tipping?
I don't really have any kind of pet peeves per se, but because there have been kind of more tip screens often to us, I always kind of wonder, well, where are these tips going? If they're going obviously to the person who's serving me, then I always want to tip. But because it's kind of, coming up with these new establishments that usually we wouldn't think of usually as tipped establishments, you kind of have to ask yourself the question. And in the end, it's kind of like, okay, I'll tip as usual. But I think it's like the lack of transparency of, are we making sure that these tips are kind of going in the right place?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because for me, the confusion starts with, okay, how much is this person making, right? And I love tipping when there is a service involved, absolutely. But then it gets to the point, like I was at a vintage retail store, right? And I was buying a shirt that I found and I checked out and all of a sudden, we've all experienced this, it said, would you like to tip? And I'm going, wait, why would I tip in this situation unless this person is not making enough? And then I start, questioning things. Like, am I picking up the slack for this business being cheap and not paying the employee enough? That's where it gets a little frustrating, Ryan.
Yeah, I agree the same way. Like I said, I come from an industry where you're kind of tipped on merit, so if you do a really good job, you get a tip. If you do a bad job, you may not get that great of a tip. So if I'm buying a t-shirt, like you said, where's that money going to? Is it going to this guy that helped me out and got me the shirt and, got me the one I wanted and it fit properly and all this kind of stuff? Then I have no problem with that. But if it's just going to, like you said, some company that doesn't want to pay their employees, then, there's maybe an issue with that.
I would love it if kind of next to the counter, there was maybe a little bit of an explanation of like, hey, here's how it works. Like you'll notice a tip screen or you'll be prompted to potentially give a tip. It's optional, but this is where it goes or this is why we do it. This is what it brings. Maybe this retail store has health insurance for the worker, which is quite unusual. Then, okay, yeah, that is something. But again, it's one of those things where, okay, is it our responsibility or should it be the responsibility of the business or, of the government?
And we're going to dig deeper into like the minimum wage. But since we're kind of all, riled up a little bit, let's talk about some places and tipping scenarios. All right. When we think about counter service, like at Chipotle or Rice Box, local foods, some of these places where you're going to order and you're going to take it off from the counter, how much are you tipping there, Emma?
I just tip 20%. Almost across the board, even if it's kind of a counter service interaction. And the way I kind of think about it is it's a percentage, right? So if I'm just having a coffee, 20% of a coffee is peanuts, it feels like a small amount. I can afford it. It's fine. I think that maybe there's a kind of argument to be made of, oh, well, that person didn't, come to my table and serve me. But at the end of the day, you're getting your coffee, you're in a hurry probably. And like, do I want to do math right there, right now? No. So I think the 20% thing, it's kind of in the culture, but it's also just kind of shorthand, sometimes.
Just round. Yeah, I
yeah.
like that. How about you, Ryan?
I'm the same way. I'm a usually straight across 20% guy, unless I'm at a restaurant, which maybe I'll tip a little bit more, like a full service restaurant, just because I'm in the industry and I understand what goes on there a little bit better than what maybe goes on at a coffee shop or a retail store and that kind of stuff. But, as a whole, if I'm doing something, they flip that screen over, I just hit the 20%er because I cook dinner. I don't do math for a living, so I don't know what's going on.
Ryan, what is happening behind the scenes, by the way, like at a full service restaurant, right? With these tips, they're so important, but there's so much happening. Like these tips do help, right? Like what happens behind the scenes?
Well, most places you have a tip pool, right? So it's evenly distributed by all your front of house employees. So back of house employees, cooks don't get tipped out. It's illegal. So there's always that kind of comes into play. So you always kind of have to try to even out the wages in the restaurant, which usually never works out fully for the back of those for the cooks. Like there's some servers that can have some really, really, really good days when the guys in the back are just making their regular paychecks. There's always that kind of.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We can't get tipped out in the back. No.
Oh, I always thought that the cooks and the front will split the tips evenly. I didn't know that it was illegal to, tip them out at the end of the night. I did not know that.
Yeah.
And because I tip mostly like when I am at a counter service or carry out, we're going to talk about that in a second too. I'm always like, this is for the chefs. Like, you guys are doing all the hard work. I did not know this.
No, we don't see any of it.
Oh man, that is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I don't want to get into what the legalities of it are, because I'll probably mess it up, and I don't want a bunch of people, leaving comments on this and just ripping me and calling me a dummy. So, but that's that's the gist of it.
Okay,
and that's really kind of contributed as well to a huge gap, kind of as Ryan said, in wages between the front of house and the back of house, which has been a big problem in the restaurant industry. And cooking on the line, I would argue probably takes even more skill than serving, which still takes some skill, but it's a big problem in the industry.
Yeah, and it can go both ways. I've never been a server, so I can't really speak of that. But they make a lower wage, but they also have to, if you have a couple slow nights, you have a slow week. They're not, these guys back there, they're usually making what they make, and they know what they're going to make. And sometimes as a front of the house person, you're not going to get that, right? So you can look at it either way.
And Ryan, can you define front of the house workers? Like who's considered front of the house? Who's back of the house?
So no one that's really cooking, right? So there's all your servers, there's your bartenders, it's your server assistants, and all your hourly employees that are not cooking are considered front of the house, that are in the tip pool.
Let's fire through some other scenarios, okay? And this is the one that I have the hardest time with. Don't judge me. Please, everyone, don't send hate messages on Instagram. Carry out, okay? I do a lot of carry out. I like picking up my own food and just bringing it home because I know I'll get it home faster and it's going to be hot and fresh. I kind of vary on this one. I like to give a 15 to 20%, but sometimes I might just give a 10%. Like I feel bad. What are the rules on carry out, y'all?
Yeah, I think if I'm speaking from like an advice etiquette standpoint, I do think I agree with you that I would judge someone less if they tip less than 20%. I still typically go the 20% route just due to my not doing math ethos.
Yeah.
But I agree that I think that in that scenario, it is probably more acceptable to kind of tip less than that. And I think a 10 to 15, I don't know, that feels kind of reasonable to me.
I'll still go 20% because I look at it this way when, like look at the pandemic when everyone was doing takeout, like you still needed some front of house hands on there, but they're not making the same amount of money as they were before. So someone is still cooking it, putting it down in containers, they're putting it in a bag, they're still bringing it, they're taking it to you, they're taking your car. There's still a lot of steps, a lot of things that go on there. So me personally, I'm tipping 20%.
Okay, and here's why I'm kind of torn on this one, all right? Because sometimes I'll look at my bill and then they're charging me like a packaging and material fee as well, in addition to the tips. And that's where I'm like, okay, you just charged me $3 or $4 for the packaging and you want me to give a tip on this. and the
Yeah.
prices are what they are, as a consumer, it gets frustrating.
That's a whole different ballgame, in my opinion. And we don't do that, Real. I'd never do anything like that. Like, I feel that something like that should be transparent up front.
Thank you.
You shouldn't have to see those kind of like whatever stuff is on your bill. Like that, you should know that this is going to come into play here. And then you can make your decision on whether you want to tip 20 or 15 or whatever the heck you want to on top of that, right? No one likes surprises when they see their bill. So that kind of thing, which I don't do, and I haven't heard about, like many people like at the place that I hang out, the guys that I know, they don't do that kind of stuff. So that's a whole different ball game, in my opinion, those kind of hidden fees.
Emma, let's go to the bars, okay? Because we love going to bars, we love getting a drink with friends. What is the proper tipping etiquette at a bar for you?
Oh, well, I'm just going to be super boring. I just tip 20% at bars. Again, someone has served me, someone has made my drink. That's difficult, right? Again, it's a percentage. So I buy one drink and it ends up being a small amount of money because, that drink was less expensive than the 3-course meal, for example. 20% all the way in bars.
And bartenders, like they got to talk to people too, like talk to drunks all night.
So you're paying more for the talking.
Oh yeah, like
this is therapy, man.
It's a therapy charge. If you change it to therapy charge, people are a little bit more okay with it.
Yeah,
like, I don't have to talk to anybody unless I come out of the kitchen. That's why most of us work in the kitchen because we don't like people. We just want to sit in the back and cook dinner, right? Those poor guys have to talk to people and listen to a bunch of BS stories, a bunch of crap, and they're drunk and not, so.
Okay, I like that. You kind of have to live with that. And the bar, 20% is good. At the end of the night, you tip out, you're good to go. Food delivery apps. This is a big one, all right? Because you've got the tip for the restaurant, you've got the tip for the driver. 20% as well for you, Emma, on this one?
Yeah, 20% as well. Honestly, and just to kind of zoom out a little bit and look at this more holistically, like, I understand, obviously, the frustration of, rising costs and everything costs more, et cetera, from a consumer's perspective. But I think consumers need to realize as well that paying someone to cook a meal for you, drive all the way to your house and drop it at your door is a luxury. And it is incredible that in this modern world, so many people are able to do that. But it's a luxury. It's not a necessity. And I think that person's time, the fuel mileage, whatever, all of that is worth 20% and more. I feel strongly about food delivery.
Especially driving in Houston.
I agree 100%. A lot of those guys, they're delivering your food when I don't want to go out, like it's raining outside or it's cold outside or there's something going on and that kind of stuff. And I don't want to leave my house. So, they're doing the dirty work for me. Like I'm just getting on an app or I'm getting on the phone and calling something that shows up at my door. So I always do my best to take care of those guys.
I have a formula. Okay. So if it's a 5-mile radius, I'm doing 20%. If it's during rush hour and if it's really far, then I'm going 30%. Like I try to keep a formula. Like how long is this going to take? If it's a 45-minute drive, like I'm going to tip a little bit more than, a guy who's just driving about 20 minutes. So I do take that into account as well for me.
And they have to deal with a lot of crap too. Like, like you said, traffic. A lot of people aren't very nice to their drivers if their stuff is 5 minutes late or, a lot of times the drivers, it's not their fault if the food they ordered didn't get there properly. It's cold or the restaurant missed something or gave them the wrong order. Like they just grab a bag and leave, right? So those guys have to deal with a lot of crap too.
Hey parents, I just took both of my daughters to Momentum Indoor Climbing, and at first they were a little overwhelmed with the massive rock climbing walls, but once they got geared up and started climbing, they went from nervous wrecks to confidently scaling walls in a matter of minutes. Heck, my 10-year-old almost beat me in a race, while my toddler just enjoyed trying. And check this out, your kids can do the same this summer at Momentum's summer camps in Katy and at Sawyer Yards. Momentum offers weekly summer camps for ages 4 to 16 years old. From beginners to experienced climbers, there's something for everyone at Momentum Climbing. Because in addition to rock climbing, the Momentum team has tons of other activities to keep your kids engaged. Plus, they have half-day or full-day options that fit your schedule. Save 10% on camp registration right now with code CityCast at checkout. Head to momentumclimbing.com/summercamps to sign up today because camps do fill up pretty fast.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast. We've all set health goals: lose weight, exercise more, eat better. But without a plan, those goals often fade. That may have happened to you. It has definitely happened to me. And that's where Prolon comes in. Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet gives you a science-backed, structured approach to stay on track and see real results. And now Prolon is upping their game with the new Next Gen 5-day program, delivering the same science-backed benefits in a cleaner, more convenient, and more flavorful format. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state, triggering cellular rejuvenation and renewal. Next Gen builds on the original Prolon with 100% organic soups and teas, a richer taste, and ready-to-eat meals. Developed over decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by top U.S. medical centers, Prolon has been shown to support biological age reduction, metabolic health, skin appearance, fat loss, and energy. I've been doing the 5-day program, and I feel so much better. I really enjoy the tasty energy bars, the snacks and soups, and the fact that I can enjoy meals, even though the calorie count is super low. The flavors and textures are excellent. An olive oil snack here, broccoli and quinoa soup there, hibiscus tea, a yummy nut bar. It's got the benefits of a 5-day fast, but doesn't have the challenge of doing it with pure liquids. It's a system reset. And also, I know this sounds funny, but it's not. The packaging and directions are fantastic, clear, and well-organized and thoughtful. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolon is offering CityCast listeners 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/city. That's PROLONLIFE.com/city to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/city.
Okay, let's talk about what these tips actually mean to workers, right? Like back in college, I used to work at Marble Slab Creamery. Your boy was slinging ice cream his freshman year, and there was one night I remember it was 8:59, and I remember this perfectly, and we closed at 9:00. This guy came in with this date and was like, "Hey, can we please get ice cream?" And we're starting to wrap up, and I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." My coworkers are like, "No, we're closed." So he comes in. I took care of him. I get him all set up, doing the whole show and everything. And he tipped me $20. And that was huge. Like, I was like, that is absolutely amazing. And that was one of those things where I didn't want to split it with my coworkers because they didn't want to, but I had to split with my coworkers. But it helped so much that week for me, right? Because you're not making that much. And when it comes to the restaurant industry in Houston, it's so big. We're talking over 10,000 restaurants, some 300,000 people working in the industry. Ryan, how important are these tips for the workers?
Well, they're huge for them, right? Especially right now, the industry's in a weird spot. Like there's a lot of places closing every day, and there's a lot of people looking for work. So unfortunately for a lot of us, what we do for a living doesn't transition to something, different unless they're working their way through school. But there's a lot of front of the house people that are lifers. They've been doing this forever, and that's kind of their bread and butter. Like I look at it kind of like their tips are like our back of the house overtime. It's your kind of like messing around money, right? Mm-hmm. You have your stuff, you pay your bills with your wages, and then whatever you make after that, you can kind of maybe go treat yourself to something or go do something. So I look at it that way.
Emma, I want to take a minute here and talk about the minimum wage in Texas versus the minimum wage for tipped workers in Texas. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So Texas has the same minimum wages as the federal minimum wages. So the minimum wage, as everyone knows here, is $7.25. But the tipped minimum wage, so that means that if you're an employee who accepts tips, is $2.13. So that's, way, way less than the minimum wage. There are some requirements, obviously, from employers where if during a given work week, your tipped employee doesn't make minimum wage with the tips, like it was a really bad week, then they are required to kind of make up the difference to get it up to the $7.25. I will say that, anecdotally, obviously, there is a lot of space for exploitation there. I don't know if you ever kind of find yourself on Reddit sometimes, on restaurant industry Reddit, but there are definitely some reports there of, employers kind of doing shady stuff and not exactly abiding by that. I'm sure, present company excluded. So it's difficult. And even the $7.25, we can all agree is just kind of not enough to really live fully. So it's even in Houston.
Is it time to boost the minimum wage for tipped workers in Texas? And I'll start with you, Emma, first, and then I want to get the restaurant perspective from Ryan next. So what do you think? Like, what would be reasonable as well?
Gosh, well, I'm not an economist.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be able to say what is reasonable. I know obviously other states and cities have pushed for $15 minimum wage. Minimum wage has not changed in a very long time.
Yeah, and that hasn't changed since 2009, by the way.
2009. There we go. Yeah. And 2009, I mean, that was a long time ago. We've lived a lot of lives since then.
Different economy, different life for sure.
So yeah, I mean, it used to be that the tipped minimum wage was actually linked to the federal minimum wage, where it always had to be 50%. Yeah. And in 1991, it became unlinked. So since 1991, the tipped minimum wage has stayed at $2.13, while the minimum wage has actually gone up a little bit. If the question is going to be, should people be paid more? Yes, absolutely. Across the board, everyone should be paid more. Now, when it comes to restaurants and eating out, and Ryan, I'm sure you'll have some thoughts about this. Are customers willing to pay higher prices if they're already kind of, whining about, tipping or extra tipping or service charges or, the extra kind of charges, which, obviously are valid gripes? Are they going to be willing to pay higher prices for higher work?
Well, they're gonna have to. Like, I don't see any other way around it, right? Because most restaurants, like upscale restaurants, and especially smaller ones like mine, on like the best of days, you're running on single digit margins. You know what I'm saying? So if you raise the minimum wage, there's gonna have to be adjustments made, or you're just not gonna make it. Like, I don't care what anyone says, the math doesn't work. And I want everyone to make an honest living and do well. But that's something that I think, I don't know if it's an easy, fix to say, hey, we're all doing this or we're all doing that. Like, there has to be something involved here where, I don't know, like there's, you have to pay tax on tips too, right? So there's a whole other ball game and other things to worry about, how to deal with this kind of stuff. So I don't know what the answer is. I really, really don't. Like, I wish I did. But I don't know what the answer is.
Ryan, how much has changed in the restaurant industry when it comes to wages, tips in the last 5 years? Obviously, we had the pandemic. Coming out of the pandemic, then we have inflation, then we've got recessions coming up, right? Like, it just feels like everything is on edge. How much has changed for you as a restaurant owner and operator?
I just put my head down and try to get through the day. That's it. If I show up at RIEL, in an hour here and the lights turn on, we're winning tonight. Like,
that's crazy because you're such a successful restaurant.
Well, success is relative, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just me. I don't want to just complain about RIEL. It's across the board. Like, everybody I talk to, some of the bigger restaurants that, have a lot more money behind them, and even guys like me, like, everyone is kind of trying to figure these things out like every day, because I'll have a real busy Monday and I'll be like, hey man, we're back, and I'll talk to like a guy that's 10 minutes away from me and he's like, I'm dead tonight, and then vice versa, and like, guys are busy, guys are not. There's kind of no rhyme or reason for it anymore. Like, you used to always know, like 10 years ago, like, you knew that when there was a oil convention coming into town, like, you were going to be packed and be a bunch of guys that's spending money recklessly. And it was great. Now you don't know what's going on. Like, the rodeo always hurts that month. The rodeo always hurts. Then, it's rodeo goes in spring break, the kids go to spring break, and like, this rodeo hurt worse than any, it just keeps kind of getting weirder and weirder and weirder, So you don't know anymore.
That is so hard to hear. So hard to hear.
Oh, it's just the truth though. Like, you can't sugarcoat it. Guys try to do this now. It's not. It's ugly out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that and kind of related to kind of tipping culture as well, I will say, when thinking about these questions that we've been talking about, I have a lot more empathy for a restaurant like RIEL and like someone like Ryan, who's like, locally owned business, trying to, kind of be an entrepreneur, and it's difficult and the margins are really tight. Whereas if we're talking about like big corporate fast food chain, then I'm kind of like, maybe you can afford to pay your workers more and I shouldn't be asked with your little tip screen to supplement that. I think that's also a big part of it, right? Is we talk about, a higher wage, but then obviously that hurts, small businesses. But it doesn't kind of affect people equally when we're talking about the Taco Bells that add the tip screens. Like, no, Taco Bell, you can pay your employees fairly. You have the money.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I'm all for it, but I've had, like employees that have worked with me for 15 years, like at other restaurants that they're like, I consider my family now. And I want them to, do well. And I know their kids and they know my kids, that kind of stuff. So it's tough to figure out that happy medium where we can keep things going okay and still have them live, a great life.
I want to do a lightning round. Okay. Emma, you're going to go first. Ryan, you're going to answer right after that. We're going to go through some categories here and get your thoughts on how much you're tipping there and what is the proper etiquette. Okay. Number 1, the grocery store.
I'm not tipping at the grocery store.
Me neither.
Wait, who, what? I have many questions.
What about curbside?
Curbside. Oh, no, I'm trying to think when I do my curbside order. There's a fee, right? Like
it's just a flat fee usually. If you're not part of the program or anything like that, there's a flat fee. And then do you tip on top of that?
No, should I? I guess I thought the fee was the labor, right? Yeah. Great question. Sorry, that was not lightning.
Ryan, how about you?
I've never done curbside before, so I don't know.
Okay. How about drive-thrus? This is one that, gets people really riled up when they go through a drive-thru and they see that tipping charge at the end. What are you doing, Emma?
I think because my understanding is that, for example, the Taco Bells and the Whataburgers, those employees are not tipped employees, I believe. And those tip screens are definitely new. And I do not think I would tip because I would be too afraid that Taco Bell gets that money and not my person who's bagging my stuff.
Gotcha.
So maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, someone please do tell me because
Yeah, I feel like it would be illegal if Taco Bell took the tipped money, right?
It would be illegal, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah, you're right. We don't know. Yeah. Ryan, how about you? Drive-thrus?
I'll tip them 10 just because I love fast food and drive-thrus.
All right. Haircuts, Emma.
Yes, I always do. And I'll add just like a 20% of whatever
Okay.
thing is.
Ryan?
I've cut my own hair for the last 20 years. And maybe I should start tipping myself.
Yeah, you should. It'd be a little extra for you.
Yeah, I'm going 25, 30 on that one if I'm tipping myself.
This is one that I tip a lot. Okay. And I'll let this person know beforehand that, yes, you will be getting a nice tip. Tattoo artists.
Yes. I 20% on the tattoo. Yeah.
Easily.
I always let my tattoo artists know ahead of time, like when I'm talking like, hey, how much is this going to be? And I'll be like, and don't worry, it's going to be your fee plus 30%. I always put that 30% out there early because I do not want a mistake when it comes to a tattoo.
Listen, I you know what I do with a lot of tattoos? I do a lot of trade. Like I got a guy give me a tattoo for 10 Butterburgers.
Whoa.
A nice one too, yeah.
Wow.
Hey, I like that. Do you tip them an extra Butterburger?
They come in, I can have a drink or something like that. Yeah, I'll throw an extra Butterburger in there.
I like
extra cheese on it.
I don't know if y'all know this or not, but Texans in general, we're not good tippers. In fact, we're actually terrible. We rank 42nd out of 50 states.
Way.
Yeah. Like, do you feel that, Ryan, working in the industry?
I didn't know that. I've never worked anywhere else really. So I never, I did not know that happened here.
How about you, Emma? Do you think like we're that bad? Do you feel it?
I mean, it does surprise me because I feel like Texans are very friendly. Houstonians especially are so friendly. I think the one thing that kind of stands out to me is the stereotype of Texans and personal responsibility and like, oh, I'm not responsible for paying your wages. But really, I think that's a stereotype and I can't think of kind of any other reason why this would be.
The only reason I've heard that, like something down here, is when some restaurants are just adding 20% on as whatever, like they would say this and it was always on the back end. You know what I'm saying? So they weren't upfront. Yeah. They weren't very clear before saying, hey, listen, when your ticket comes, there's going to be this 20% charge on there that's going to go to, health insurance or the staff or the heck it is, right? I'm saying, and they see that and it kind of is off-putting because they feel like, they're getting, hosed. They said, hey, here's what's going on.
Yeah.
Before you eat, before you make a decision how much money you want to spend, listen, there's going to be 20 points on top of this right here. So now you know, and I think that's fair. I don't think it's that fair just giving it to somebody and not seeing it. Even in the small print on the menu, like no one reads a small print unless, really you think it's telling you don't eat raw oysters, they'll kill you.
Having a big family, when we go out, it's 6+ people every time, right? When I'm bringing my parents, my brother, my sister-in-law, everybody, I'm used to those charges. 6+, please go ahead and just add it on, because I know a lot of people who will screw the waiters when there is a big party and they'll tip like 5%, 10%, and it's so annoying. So I get it. But when it's just 2 people, don't add that, please. It's so frustrating.
That's industry standard, right? Usually like 8 to 10 people, you just add the 20% tip on there. Then no one has to do any math and no one's doing whatever, right? I'm just saying there's some places that just did that kind of that service charge thing that was just not upfront about it.
Yeah, that's true. All right, I want to end on this because right now, while us 3 are, we're tipping, we feel good about it. It's something that we like doing. It seems like more than 2/3 of Americans actually feel negatively about tipping, and about 30% say it's out of control. How can we make this a better experience for everyone? Emma?
Support higher minimum wages for everyone and abolish tipping. I mean, but, that's very idealistic because people will have opinions about that as well.
I agree 100%, but just unfortunately, a lot of these places that try to get rid of tipping in all over the US, it never worked anywhere. It sounds like a good idea, but I think everyone is so used to this. It's such ingrained in us, that they're going to get a tip. And it works the other way too. Like there's crappy people that come into your restaurant that think they're going to punish you for giving them tips like that.
I think transparency would also help. Like you mentioned
100%.
earlier in this conversation, Emma, like if there's a sign saying, hey, we pay our workers X, Y, and Z, and if you want to give a tip, great. Like I think just that transparency would be such a big solution. Emma, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for being so candid about your tipping habits and the new etiquette that we should all be using here around the city of Houston. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
That was Emma Balter, editor-in-chief at Houstonia Magazine, which, by the way, make sure you check out their spring issue, which is out now and features a story by yours truly. And Ryan Lachaine, chef and co-owner of RIEL in Montrose. I know we all have that one friend who is so cheap when it comes to tipping. So please share this episode with that friend so they can learn the new rules for tipping and why it's so important. Also, help us grow the show by hitting that subscribe button if you're new here or a longtime listener. And of course, drop us a rating and review wherever you listen. Want even more Houston news, restaurant recs, and moments of joy? Subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, with the info in our show notes. Thanks. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new.
This may be the first podcast I've never sworn on.
Hey, look at that, Ryan.
Listen, I do Eric Sandler's podcast, and every time I'm on there, I try to break record. I'll say it 200 times on purpose.
Man.